Hello and welcome to yet another Blender Sushi live noding tutorial. As usual, I'll be covering I'll be exploring some animation nodes, add-on, and today's topic will be quite random. Actually, I will cover quite a lot of topics, but basically, I will talk about how we can deal with multiple objects inside animation nodes, whether it is to place objects in the scenes. So instead of manually placing objects, you can use animation nodes to do that, and also a way so you can perhaps place lamp or camera maybe. Yeah, maybe let's just get started. I'll create a new file. We have the default layout here. We have the lamp, camera, default cube. We can keep all of those. I'll go to compositing layout. We have this as usual. And let's see. Let's create a node tree. If you are just started to use Blender and then you're watching this video and then watching me looking at this guy using animation nodes add-on all the time, you might wonder whether is this how you work in 3D or this is how you work inside Blender. Not really. The honest answer to that is actually I like animation nodes a lot because it's kind of it's allowing just a normal Blender artist who has no programming background to start using Node and working more kind of something that you might not be able to do unless you use a Python program. But if you're working in nodes, you kind of, instead of saying no and I will never touch or any programming, you can start using some of the nodes that animation nodes offer to you, and you kind of start to think programmatically. Eventually you might want to get into more technical part, but even as in a really basic level, you can take advantage of these animation nodes because it works almost like a modifier in Blender. And I've been using Blender for a few years now, maybe 4 or 5 years, and my background was using Maya and Houdini. I like Blender a lot because sometimes when working with objects, or whether you're using these Blender's own Python console, or maybe you're typing your own Python script, you can access a lot of parts and everything is kind of working together. Even like, say now I'm using animation nodes all the time. It's almost, I cannot work without animation nodes inside Blender anymore. But for a lot of areas in Blender, no matter which type of objects you're working on, you can use animation nodes to help you to work. Anyway, I talk quite a lot for introduction, but I'll show you what I mean. Let's say you have bunch of objects, right? Just mesh objects, monkey, create a torus, and then all these kind of objects in the scene. And what else can I make? I have torus. Yeah, I have most of them. Maybe sphere as well. sphere. Yep. If bunch of objects, and then if someone told you, hey, I want you to arrange all these objects in like a grid, you know, can you do that for me? You're thinking, okay, you can do it manually, or you can probably using a Python script to do that. But you can actually do it using animation nodes, and that's really handy all the time. You can use this all the time, and it will not mess up your 3D scenes. And let's see how we can do that. You probably thinking, okay, you can create a list of objects, right? You might think, okay, let's get that objects, new input, that objects. Okay, let's just arrange these 3 objects using object transform, output, and let's hide this for now. You have list of objects. If you plug that in and you start to arrange the objects manually, maybe put that at 0, 0, 0, and then the next objects you want it to be 3 units to the side, next objects another 3 units. That's if you want to do it manually one by one, but you don't want to do that. Of course, you have list of objects and you want to transform each and every single objects, so you can use loop. So while holding this create object list, you can tap on W, and there's this pop-up pie button came out. You can select loop through the list of 3 objects. So this guy goes into the loop. Inside the loop, you can of course use the object transform, output, and you can arrange the object like that. At the moment it goes, every single one goes into 0, 0, 0, but maybe you want to kind of stagger them, and we can use the index, because the index, if we debug, if we have a look at the index value, let's use debug loop. It goes from it's 0, 1, 2, 3 objects. Index goes start from 0, 0, 1, 2. If you want to maybe rearrange this better, we can use a little bit of vector math. So with index goes in. Actually, you don't need the vector math, but you really want to use the just normal math node, because we have value that goes from 0, 0, 1, 2, and if you multiply each and every one of the number, of course we can then space our objects like that, and that's in x-axis. As the y and z stay the same, you can do that. How about the rest of them? You can add more input and then select them one by one. That will work fine. But what if you have like a lot more objects? What you gonna do about it? How can we do that? How can we arrange it? Now there is a better way, is by using group. Let's say you have let's delete this for now. So, and these objects are now free. They're no longer influenced by animation nodes. You can delete animation nodes actually at this stage. You can delete all of them. Let's say you have a bunch more objects in the scene, and you want to arrange them in the grid. How are you going to do that? So a better way is, instead of creating lists for each item, you can select all of them and group them. Control G. Now grouping in Blender is it's a built-in Blender thing. So if I'm not wrong, it's under this object tab, and you can see it's a group. Let's call it my objects, and you might have another objects. Let's say what's gonna be grid cylinder. We haven't got cylinder. Okay, cylinder is not part of the group, but we will see how we can add the cylinder into the group later. So we have this guy in a group, and we can bring them into animation nodes. See, there's a node called object from group, and we can select our group like that. So it will select the group name, and from here we can actually query, and we can work with each of the objects in the group. Let's say we want to arrange them in a grid fashion. Animation nodes actually have these useful templates that you can look into, and you can use them time to time. Let's say we want to arrange the grid objects in a grid. We can use this guy, grid arrange objects, and from here we can make use of this guy. So basically what the node 3 is doing is it's saying, okay, we're gonna provide a bunch of objects, and the grid mesh will actually generate the grid to place each of the objects like there. So we don't need this guy, but we can plug in the objects into that thingy, and magically all the objects snaps and arrange into the grid. Super handy, really useful, and you can change the grid like that, and as you can see, all the objects are arranged properly. Of course, the number of points in the grid should be more than the total number of the objects. So now if you want a cylinder to go inside the group, and if you're familiar with Blender, you can add it to the group by, if I'm not wrong, so you select those guys that are not part of the group, and then you select one object in the group. You can then Command L or Control L, and make links into the group. So now the object is part of the group, and of course it will snap to the grid. You can arrange the grid, change the number of the grid, make a new arrangement. Yeah, anything you like. You can of course do things like scale the objects all at the same time. You can randomize the scale, of course, randomize the rotations. Let's just do it anyway. Random vector. I think rotation actually prefer wiggle. I rather use wiggle for that. With the scale, You can have random vector for that. Yeah, if you don't want, just delete it. Once you've done with it, anyway, you can do whatever there just to influence the transform of each object. And once you've done, you just delete, select everything, delete, and you're back. And you can work in 3D like normally. And you have all the objects arranged like that. It's really, really handy, and I suggest you, I mean, for whenever you install Blender, just install animation nodes add-on right away. It's gonna come in handy. Next, I will talk. Let's see. I have a list of what I'm gonna talk right here. Objects, color. Okay. So since the topic is dealing with multiple objects, let's say we want to arrange light. Suppose we want to arrange light in the scene. How are we going to do that? Let's say you have like a pathway, and then you want to make a bunch of light. Let's say, let's draw something. Let's go to the top view, and then let's say you want to place some lights along this path, right? I just draw it using Grease Pencil, and I was holding D and I can draw. Grease Pencil is also super useful Blender features. I love it. It's the only Blender is probably Blender's Grease Pencil is the best Grease Pencil out there, not Houdini or Maya. Blender Grease Pencil is really awesome, basically. So you draw a path like that, and you want someone told you, okay, I want you to make light like a lamp, create lamp, and place it along the path of that Grease Pencil. Okay, how are you going to do that? You can do it manually, of course, but we're gonna use animation nodes, right? So we have the Grease Pencil, and we can convert the Grease Pencil into curve. I tap spacebar, and I type in convert Grease Pencil into a Bezier curve. I will use Bezier curve because I think animation node likes Bezier curve and polygon curve. And you cannot see the curve because the Grease Pencil is covering it. So let's delete the Grease Pencil, and we have our curve. Normally the curve from Grease Pencil is pretty dense, like that. You might want to use another add-on to simplify the curve, or for now we just leave it like that. And with the curve, I will place it just near the grid like that. So that's our path. And let's see, does animation nodes have place along spline? Distribute instances on spline. Yeah, there's that one there you can use. Say let's get a spline, and let's get our lamp. Okay, it works, and if you move the curve, the lamp will follow. With instances, I just figure out you can actually you can hide those lines from here, right? Display, hide the relationship lines right there, or you can select the node and in here under advanced node setting, you can hide relationship lines over there. So that's super handy, and you can of course increase the number of light like so. Let's make it 10 for now. Let's save this file. Animation nodes, layout tricks 001. And Blender light. So the next things, so we can now arrange the light like that. And if we delete all the nodes, we will be left with all just the lights that we need. Okay, the next topic will be like how we can use animation nodes to affect the attributes of an object in Blender, whether the attribute is from mesh or curve, surface, text, lamp, camera. We can control any attribute directly from animation nodes. Sometimes you might need to dig in the Blender Python, but you will see that you don't always need to do that. I'm gonna show you right away. With the light, let's create a grid so we can see what's going on with the light. It's gonna be our floor. Place it like that. Scale it. Place it just under the grid like that. So grid mesh. So to be able to see the light, we change our viewport shading into material. I think yeah, the material does the job. Texture, no, material. And you might want to switch to OpenGL if you have a good graphic card. GLSL. You can turn on ambient occlusion as well. We don't need that for now. So we have bunch of lights. Let's make it like 8 light for now so we can control them more easily. Okay, we have lights. What are we going to do with it? Let's say we have this original light. We can move it right there. Let's say your art director or wants asked you to make the light, make sure all the lights have a random color slightly or random intensity. You can do it manually, of course, or using script, but with animation nodes you can do it a lot easily, just a lot easier than actually trying to find a way to do it. Use a program using Python script. Let's see how we're gonna do it manually first. You have this light, and you go underneath the light tab. You can change the color over there. Make it pink. You might notice that all the light colors become pink, and it's following the main light. That's because with a copy, you need to make sure you have a copy full objects and dip copy turned on. So now each object is actually they have all individual different value. Now if I change one, that the original light is become green just by itself. If you want to do it using animation nodes, you can use the attribute output, object attribute output, if I'm not wrong. Let's just search it. Search for attribute, object attribute you have the input and the output. The input basically allowing you to bring in the value of data from the 3D scenes, while the output allowing you to change the value from inside animation nodes. Okay, let's just have a look. How are we going to do that? First, you can guess. So we need the attribute of the light color. For example, it's green at the moment. I can change it to blue color or purple. And if you're familiar with Blender scripting, oftentimes you can pick underneath, actually on the top above, like if you drag it from the top, you can see whenever you make changes to the 3D objects, oftentimes you have this information up there, and you can use those information and type your own Python script to change the value that way. Or if you are using animation nodes, you'll look at it and then, okay, you will need an attribute called color. Color, is that correct? Let's say we type in color. It seems to be doing something. And if we source that object, the light, and it says value has a wrong type. I think we need a color. Let's say color input, and if you plug in the color, change the color, hey, it's not working. What's going on, right? You might be thinking, hey, we have the right thing. What did I do wrong, right? Here is the tricky part. Sometimes you might need to, instead of typing just color, you need to type in data color, and that will work for point. And sometimes with the data type, you need to be careful as well. Even though color goes into the value here, it doesn't quite work. You actually will need a vector input, which is just a 3 value, not 4 value with alpha, because color have 4 value, I think. Anyway, I tested with vector, and vector actually does the job. It's a little bit weird, but that's just how it is for now. Maybe it will change slightly, but basically you need to know the actual name of the attribute. Like in this case, it's a data.color, and then you need to put in the right type of data. So if we want to apply this into our our point lights instances there, we can simply plug in our objects list like so, and for each one of them, let's say if you want a random color, what do we use? We use random vector, and create that, and we plug in the index into the seed because we want a different value for each instance, and plug in a vector into the value. Let's get rid of that and make sure the object goes into the object list. For each object, give a random color light. Okay, so it's working, and we can further randomize the color, and we have like a disco party right there. And you can have, of course, you can increase the light the number of light in the scene, like make it 20 for example, 20 light, all with different color. Maybe the scene is too bright at the moment, so suppose so maybe you want to turn off, I mean you want to adjust the intensity of the light. You see the attribute name is energy, so let's try and adjust that. Just duplicate object attribute output and pipe in, oops, let's just have like a 12 light for now. Actually, in fact, you might not be, you might don't need all this light to keep changing color all the time. Once you're happy with the light, you can just cut it. And so you just need one node. So the next thing you want to adjust is the energy, for example. With the energy, you will need a float. So whenever you see the red dots input or output like that, that means it's kind of like generic. You can try to plug in anything into anything. Sometimes you might also use a node called convert, and that will try to convert the data type for you. And it might work, it might not work, but give it that a try. So with energy, you can also use the object attribute output just like that. It's really handy, and that's just another thing, another useful things you can do using animation nodes. You might say, instead of arranging the light like that, you want it to be in a grid. Of course, you can do that as well. So we look at our setup right here. So basically the template is saying you have bunch of copy of the light and arrange it in a spline. But since we want to arrange it in the grid, so we don't need, we can get rid of the spline input and get rid of the direction. We keep the locations, but we create our own grid. Create the template. We don't need that. We can create a grid mesh ourselves and use the vertices as the location of each light copy. And we offset the position, bring it up. And then how many lights do we need? 25, because 5 times 5 is 25, and it's too bright. Let's increase the gap of the grid. It's super bright at the moment. And let's just turn down the intensity. Okay, we have our bunch of light and everything is ready. Once you're happy with it, you select all the nodes inside animation nodes and then just delete it. Oh wait, let's undo that. okay, with the light you might say, because you have the original right there, and you want to bake the light. So in this case, you select all the light, and then Shift D to duplicate it, and then move it to another layer. And now you can delete animation nodes, and then brought in all the light, put it into layer 1. So yeah, that can be useful. So we cover how we can arrange objects, we cover how we can change the light colors using animation nodes. Maybe I can also cover one more thing. It's for the object colors. So object colors, when working with animation nodes, we don't I like working with colors all the time. Like if you have objects, bunch of objects like that, and let's say I want to be able to randomize the color. If someone asks you, I want to have random objects colors, and how are you going to do that using animation nodes, right? It can be, the answer can be, there are a few options. Basically, you can use the object's color itself, which is this guy. And I believe if we turn on the solid texture, I might need a material and use the object color. So you need to do that for each object. Let's link the material. Command L, Control L, and link the material. So for each object, we can have different color. This is more like a specific Blender way. So each object in the Blender can have different color, like that. And this guy will render as well, and the object colors can be transparent as well. It's not displaying on my computer. Textured, solid. I might need a light. Hemisphere, light. Texture. Okay, it works when we have light, and it's viewport shading is in texture mode, so we can have like a transparent, and this kind of setting will work if you use Blender Render, if I'm not wrong. It might be for just for the viewport viewing. Yeah, you can randomize the object colors that way, or you can also use the vertex color data, which is something you might want to do, because these days it's probably recommended if you use the Blender cycles, the cycles render, instead of the original, the default Blender render, because Blender cycles can give you much more options. With Blender render, anyway, if you want to change the object color using animation nodes, you can use the object attribute output, and let's say this purple guy, let's get the object. What's the attribute name? You look at it and then, oh, it says colors. Let's copy data path, paste it in. Color value has the wrong type. Okay. Here's the funny thing. In this case, you need to use that node right there. And if you want to adjust the color for all those objects, we can group them, and then objects from group, grab our group, and then we look through each and every objects. Like so, and plug in that objects, and now we have control over all of those objects. With this guy, see, I don't quite like this node too much because it doesn't give the input options except for the alpha. This color should be more like it needs the input. If you try to use vector, random vector, and plug in to the seed, plug that in, it might complain. See, value has wrong type. Oh well, that I need to probably ask the animation nodes developer. You might be able to use the convert. Actually, convert. Boom. No, it still doesn't like it, so it will take only color. You can use let's say you make a list of color. List of color. Where's color? Objects. Color. Choose color. Combine color. Combine color. No, not combine color. I'm looking for combine color. It's weird. I'm pretty sure there is a list for color. There you go, it wasn't there. So either this or this guy. If you provide it with a color that of your choice, like that, maybe 3 color, and you plug that in, funny, doesn't actually work. Combine color, it might want to use this then. List. I know, maybe we need to get element. Get this element. Okay, it works. So you need to do it yourself like that. And if you want to randomize, plug that in, it will work. But since we have only 3 colors, the index will not work, as the index goes from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 until the total number of colors. So we will need a random number. Random number is cool. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 3 colors, and we want a random value between 0 and 3. We can tell it so, and plug it in like so, like that. So that's how you might want to colorize your objects using animation nodes and the normal Blender workflow. You see, as I delete the animation nodes 3, I can go back to normal 3D view, and I have all these objects with random color. But one more thing, that's if you are using Blender render, it will render um, with different color. But if you're using cycles, yeah, it's slightly different again. So you have, let's say you have this material and give it a color. Okay, it's at the moment it's a single material and bunch of objects. What if you want to have different color in the scene? So since this is a cycle actually use nodes already. It's a node-based material workflow. It's pink or any color that you assign, and they're using the same material, but of course this is a node-based, and you can give a like a random color this way. You need a color ramp, constant. Ooh, okay. Red color, blue color, one more color, give it a yellow. Okay, we have a color ramp. This is basically like our list of color, and based on random, add it to the vector, we can have different colored objects. Try object index. Didn't work. Oh, it just crashed. It crashed on me. Okay, it should actually work, but yeah. If you are using cycles, you want to randomize the color that way. So you have a single materials, and then you have a bunch of colors that it can select based on the factor you give in. And but if you are using animation nodes and want to give a random color, you make sure that you look into Vertex Coloring. So let's start again, since it just crashes. Compositing. Okay, let's do it quickly. Create a new node 3 and use the templates, grid arrange objects, or maybe 3D grid. Use 3D grid for now, so it's different. It's a grid, but it's too close to each other. Increase the distance. Like that. Object instancer, get rid of the relationship lines. So we have the 3D grid objects, maybe too many. 5 by 5 by 5, that should be good. move our original objects. Let's save this. So if you have a bunch of objects, once again, if you're working with cycles, you have a color, and if you want to have all different random color, you go into the cycles, node 3, material node 3, and then you can use the object info node as the color RAM. Okay, one thing that I forgot is to make sure this is using a full copy or deep copy, one of those. But since with cycle you are using a single material, you might don't need to do that. Let's have a look. Let's give it a try. Turn this into constant. Add another color. And now plug that in based on location. Give it different color. Try object index. Try random. Interesting. I know. We might need to render it out. Okay, it works when we actually render it out. It's not displaying. So that's the thing. It's not displaying on 3D view, but when it's rendered, it's working. Based on locations. Yeah, so just be careful with that. When working with cycles, you have to ensure that you choose either you use this way of randomization, or if you want to use animation nodes, you need to use the vertex coloring. Let me show that real quick. So stop the rendering, get rid of this, attribute. This guy is gonna be for the vertex color to go inside into the objects. Okay. If you want to assign it into just this single objects, set vertex color, select, grab your objects, give it a red color or something. By default, it's creating this vertex coloring, and they call it call, and should be underneath here as well. If you go back to the material node, in, have a look. See, it's red color. Go back to animation node. So you have 3D loop input, vector list goes in there, object list, that's the final loop. So I believe you can just plug that in and check the render. It's all red, cool. And with the color list, see, list and create color list, green, yellow, red or purple. Plug that in, index, plug in the index, yep, seems to work, but it needs to be refreshed somewhat. Random number, so we have 3 different color, and using the index, plug it into the seed, plug this into the index, refresh, we get our thingy working. So yeah, that's how you can randomize color using all kind of different ways. But in the end, if you want to use something like animation nodes, you need to use the Vertex Coloring, because it's a cycle render, and cycle render is slightly different. If you use normal Blender render, you can colorize the objects from here, and that will transfer into the material. But in a real production, you might actually use a different way. Maybe you randomize your objects copy by the texture, so that's something that you wanna check as well. But for now, you have a lot of new tricks I show you, like how you can position objects randomly or more procedurally into a grid. You can duplicate light, you can do a lot of things, and once you're happy with it, you just delete the animation nodes and you will get the result. Okay, hope that's useful. I'll see you